Hello, I'm Dr. Angelo Landricina, aka DermAngelo. I'm a dermatologist and a skincare monger, and I am so happy to welcome you back to my YouTube channel. I know that this is not the typical way that you're used to seeing me here. Right now, I'm preparing for my board certification exam, and I didn't have a ton of time this month to film a YouTube video for you, but I still did want to bring you something. So, what follows this is a conversation that I had with Charlotte Palermino, aka at Charlotte Parlor. She is one of my favorite skincare people on TikTok and Instagram. Our conversation started centered around skincare concerns in people who are medically transitioning, but we touch on all different kinds of skin concerns. We talked about some of our favorite ingredients, and we even talked about some black magic deep chemical peels. So, if that sounds great to you, keep on watching. As always, make sure you are also subscribed here and following along on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, all at DermAngelo. And I'm also going to link Charlotte's social media down below. Go follow her. You will not be disappointed.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm so excited to have. How do you like to be addressed? Dr. Angelo and Angelo, DermAngelo.
Oh, whatever. Yeah, Dr. Angelo Landricina, aka DermAngelo.
Okay,
That's me.
I love that. You're like, you need to do this when you say DermAngelo,
I
or Skin Father, or what was the other one? Skin Daddy?
Derm Daddy, Skin
Derm Daddy.
Father, they all
Derm
work.
Daddy is my favorite. And we're here today to talk about medically transitioning, what happens to your skin, how to deal with it, but also just hormones in general. So I
Mhm.
would love for you to introduce yourself, talk about your background, and yeah, then we can just dive into the questions we got.
Great. So I am, as I said, Dr. Angelo Landricina. I am a New York City-based dermatologist. A little bit about my background. I completed my residency at George Washington University in DC, and since then have developed a research interest, one in like information technologies and social media and how people find, consume, and appraise information that they find about their personal health on the internet and IT modalities. And the other research interest of mine is LGBTQ plus focused dermatology, including, being, I call myself the originator of this concept. I think I just put a name to it, supportive gender affirming dermatology. So allowing us dermatologists to assist gender minority patients in their medical transitions by minimizing side effects and maximizing outcomes.
So I mean, in terms of expertise, because I was looking on the internet for answers, because that's what we always do, us non-dermatologists, we go on Google, which I'm sure sometimes can be the bane of your existence. And I was looking for research and I was like, I actually can't help people. Like, I don't know where to find this information. So is this a new emerging thing that we're starting to see in skincare? Um, or is it something that has been researched? I just haven't been able to find the studies yet.
So there is some research out there, and I think that there's been more and more interest in this topic in the dermatology literature in the last few years. There are several other people doing really great work on this. I think that unfortunately, when it comes to the skin, a lot of the research has been lumped in with other research about hormone therapy or surgeries or what have you, because the doctors quite often orchestrating medical transitions are surgeons and endocrinologists and even primary care providers. So a lot of that interest preliminarily from dermatology has been finding what information is out there and compiling it and thinking about how we could assist these patients in their transitions. Going forward, my hope is that we as a field can do more of our own research, and that's why I have to put this in here, because anytime I talk about this topic, if any physicians are listening, you need to think about the routine collection of data about sexual orientation and gender identity, because without that information, even at the clinic level, it is very hard to collect data to help these patients. So that's where we stand.
Okay, that's good to know. So I think just to start, I would love to talk about how hormones impact the skin. I think that a lot of people put an outsized, like, of course, pollution is going to impact your skin. People always like blame like oil, right? And, I am a child of the 80s and 90s where, we were taught that like you need to get rid of all of your oil. And I think that, hormones impact different things, and also at different stages in our life. Like I've been hearing a lot from my friends who are in their 50s how they're starting to do HRT because of menopause. So I would love to talk about how hormones impact the skin, how it does impact everyone, and then how it impacts when you are transitioning.
Great. So, typically when we're thinking about sex hormones, so estrogens and androgens, um, this is the way I explain it to my patients. So it's been classically thought of that, estrogens are female hormones and androgens are male hormones. I like to take that terminology off of it and say, typically we associate androgens with people who are XY and estrogens with people who are XX, but it's really more complicated than that because all of us have all of these hormones in varying amounts. So a lot of the effects that we see with androgens, for instance, include increased sebum production, include increased keratinization and hyperproliferation of the epidermis, and also can include things like, the growth of terminal hair or even androgenic alopecia, which both people of any gender can suffer from, which is actually more of a trait. So, that's one side of the spectrum, and estrogens do a lot of the opposite. However, like you were alluding to, with, changes at different stages of our lives, as we get older, the production of these hormones tends to decrease, and we could see manifestations of that. So many times after menopause, people will report changes in their skin quality. And we have seen that there's been research done where they actually biopsy people's skin before and after HRT for menopause. And they find that giving the hormone replacement, kind of rebuilds the dermis and results in more collagen production. So we know that at different stages of life, these hormones change, and because of that, our skin does change too. And then it does come into play for people who are medically transitioning. The way that I describe this to doctors is, we in dermatology often treat people with PCOS. So that's when the ovaries are overproducing these estrogens. And since estrogens and androgens kind of can transform back and forth, having an estrogen excess leads to an androgen excess. So in many of these patients, we see acne, hair loss, unwanted facial hair. When it comes to gender transitioning for transmasculine patients, giving exogenous testosterone, you want some of those things. You want that facial hair growth, you want body hair growth, you want changes in muscle mass. However, many of those patients do not want acne that comes along with it, and do not want, male pattern hair loss. So for those patients, many times we do see sometimes really severe acne. It's hard to put a number on exactly how many of those patients will experience acne on their testosterone therapy. One of the reasons for that is that there is no standardized testosterone regimen. So people are getting different hormone regimens.
Is there like an ideal number, like for a person, like this is what you need for that balance, like, or is it just it really depends on the individual?
So that I think that's a better question for an endocrinologist, but one of the things that has been found in the derm literature is that transmasculine patients who had a testosterone level that was higher than what's considered, the adult median number, which I believe is 630 nanograms per deciliter, we're more likely to have acne. However, for any patient who's starting testosterone, we have seen in the literature that within the first few years, anywhere from about 50 to 88% of them will experience new or worsening acne, and that may persist long term. So sometimes up to or exceeding 10 years on testosterone.
And so for skincare in that kind of, and sorry to cut you off just because like now I'm
No,
like
it's fine.
fascinated. I'm like, do we like, because typically when somebody has acne, it's like they're like, I tried retinol. Like, what are some of the things that you can, give to someone that is experiencing acne through this? Like, because another thing that I saw a lot in the questions is my skin is super thin. And I couldn't understand why that was, I don't understand why that happens, but it's like, can you give somebody retinol or is their skin too sensitive?
So, speaking about thinning of skin, I haven't seen anything about that in the literature, and based on, the physiology of the skin, I can't see why that would be necessarily with hormone therapy. However, we do know that retinoids do lead to collagen deposition, increased dermal thickness. So that's definitely a place to start. I always say in the treatment of acne in people on testosterone, you're going to go with your classic therapies first. So retinoids, sometimes antibiotics, but many of those patients will end up progressing to the need for isotretinoin, formerly known as Accutane. And in those cases, that's kind of a difficult situation for us dermatologists because unfortunately, where do I start with this? So in order to get isotretinoin prescribed to you, you have to register with this program called iPledge. That's a risk management system run by the FDA. This is something that they do for any medication that could cause birth defects if a person takes it while pregnant, severe birth defects specifically. It's not really a gender affirming system because there's only 3 options for how you can self-describe: male, female of reproductive potential, or female not of reproductive potential. It creates a problem for us dermatologists because, for somebody like me who's trying to provide gender affirming care and wants my patients to know that their identity is valid and that I value it, to then tell them, hey, you have to go into the system and register as your sex assigned at birth. You know, this is something that I hope people know about beforehand, because it is not a reflection on your relationship with your doctor, and it's something that many of us are actively trying to change and advocating against. So that said, yes, many of these patients have acne that is so severe that they do need isotretinoin, and I just would hope that, I know that there's a lot of fear and stigma around that medication already, but it could potentially be life-changing in these cases. And I'm not just saying that, like, it's a medication that I've taken myself that has changed my life. So
Well, I
yeah.
find that when people tend to, we'll say, neg on isotretinoin, it's never really coming from a medical perspective. It's coming from, I read these research articles and XYZ person told me. That's typically what I find when I see a reporter talking about isotretinoin. And, everyone's allowed to their opinions, whether they are rooted in fact or not. That's, fear isn't rooted in facts, right? It's
Mhm.
irrational. But what I will say is that, just like generally speaking, when somebody gets to the point of isotretinoin, they probably tried double cleansing. They probably tried natural remedies. They probably tried to change their diets. And I think for me, something that I'm really big on in skincare is let's take the shame out of it, because we tend to blame the consumer so much for what's happening. And sometimes it is because there is an imbalance, and you do need something that is going to be a little bit more severe than trying a lavender oil, which I'm sure you would try if you're at the point of trying isotretinoin. Like, it's just, to me, it's a bit much when people get to that point, because for me, I'm never about kind of shaming the individual, especially when they've been struggling with something that, is really difficult. So I think that in terms of skin thinning, what's interesting is that I see people when they complain about skin thinning, it's actually about more like skin dryness. And it feels thin and it feels sensitive and like, oh, my skin's thin. And it's like, well, not necessarily. So is dryness something that happens a lot? And what are some ways to kind of tackle dryness without then triggering acne, et cetera?
Great. I'm so glad that you brought that up because, we were talking about people on testosterone therapy, and we know that testosterone increases sebum production, and that's part of the way that it can contribute to new or worsening acne. On the flip side of that, for patients who are on estrogens or anti-androgen therapy, we do see that their sebum production decreases and they have drier skin. So many of them can even develop a type of eczema called asteatotic eczema, which is basically where your barrier is so compromised that you start developing eczema. So for those people, what I would say, and this is what I tell all of my patients with a kind of like dry skin phenotype, your skincare has to start with your bathing habits. Many of them often look at me like I'm crazy and like I'm like accusing them of not showering or something, but it's really the opposite. So really, this is the concept that I launched my whole social media platform off of. You go to my blog.
I love this blog. Okay, yeah, we need to plug your blog really quick because your blog is so great. You're an amazing writer. But the showering, let's talk because I am a scalding hot shower and it changed my skin. So go.
So if you go to my blog and scroll all the way to the beginning, I thought about it. I was like, where do I start writing? What is the biggest misconception in skincare that people have? What is the one thing that people have surprisingly very, very little information around? And it was around showering. So that first article on my website, DermAngelo.com, I had to plug that there, is called "You're Probably Showering Wrong." And that is the truth. So what I tell my patients, and it's funny, like the array of reactions that I get to this information goes from like, oh yeah, I'm already doing that, to like literally shocked. You want to shower once a day at most, with lukewarm water, not hot water. Hot water will dry your skin out. You want to only be in there for 5 minutes maximum, and you really only need soap.
Clearly only read the headline. Wait, what? 5 minutes max?
And you only need soap to the underarms, groin, and backside. This is something that people are freaked out about. They're like, how do I get the rest of my body clean? Obviously, like I always say, if your skin is visibly soiled, like if you were, I don't know, gardening or rolling in the mud or whatever the hell it is, yes, put soap on those areas. But if it's a regular day, it's so funny because this is always like the debate on Twitter, like, do you soap your legs in the shower? And a lot of people don't. And you know what? They're right to do that because that soap can dry out your skin. There's no need for it. And then when you're done showering, you want to lightly towel off. And then while you still have a few drops of water on the skin, apply your moisturizer. So if you have dry skin, it's probably better to go with something that like you need to scoop out of a jar. That's like a good
Like
general rule.
The CeraVe tub,
The
which
CeraVe
I
tub
love.
is
I
a
love
good
that.
one. I would say also, for people who are on estrogens, you don't want to just replace ceramides. You also want to replace lipids because sebum is composed of lipids. So one of
Yeah.
my go-tos for that is La Roche-Posay's Lipicar AP Balm. It's like chock full of ceramides. It does come in a pump, but it's still a very thick moisturizer, and that will help.
It also has oils and stuff like that as well. And it's not because I was using this Eucerin for a while because somebody was like, oh, it's great. And I would put it on and it would just like, it wouldn't even spread. And I was like, I can tell this is just literally like, I don't even know what's in this. It's just like, it was almost like squeaky on the skin. So you kind of want that like nice, like melting, balmy, oily
Mhm.
ceramide. I love ceramides, but yeah, oils are great too. I mean, I have like a whole routine where it's like I spray my body with like a glycerin water mix that
Ooh.
I get. Then I do the CeraVe, and then I do like a grapeseed oil all over because I have like incredibly dry skin. And 5 minute rule, that's going to be my new thing. But we're seeing a lot of skincare, like body skincare products coming out that are like AHAs, like I believe Necessaire has like this like lactic acid vibe, body care product. Like, how about exfoliating? Like, is that going to help at all, or is that going to further strip the skin?
I think it could be, if you're already a dry skin person, if you have barrier impairment, if you feel like you're getting irritation, exfoliating isn't really going to be the way to go.
The same for your body as for your face,
Yeah,
right? So it's like
yeah.
if you have an impaired barrier in your body, don't start putting lactic acid all over it.
hmm I mean, yeah, I mean, on the other hand, there could be certain reasons why somebody would want to use that. Say if you're getting body acne or if you have keratosis pilaris or something like that. But I would say in, the realm of dry skin, it might not be the best thing. However, I do kind of like this trend of us treating our body skin like we treat our facial skin in some ways. And that's why I'm happy that, so many body products now are like introducing niacinamide's in everything now. So,
Yeah. We're launching a hand cream and niacinamide is in the hand cream.
yeah, no, and I mean, that makes sense. You do
It helps
want,
with barrier function and dark spots. So
yeah, so perfect match there.
yeah, it's an easy one to stabilize too. So that's why it's like it can be in a lot of products and it's not going to throw off the formula. Because I'm seeing a lot of stuff with like kojic acid, and it's like we've never had good luck with kojic acid. And that the formula actually surviving, like a 90-day stability test. We're like, no, it died again. So I would love to talk about facial ingrowns, because that's another one where people are starting to learn how to shave, and that there's a lot of irritation from that as well. And so, I mean, I guess if, yeah, I would love for you to kind of talk through that.
Okay, so for shaving, um, interestingly, like there was a study that came out a few years ago, and I should find it for you, but like I'm just recalling, they looked at what were, the best shaving practices to prevent irritation, and ingrowns, and it goes against like a lot of the classical wisdom that we had used. So in the past, it was like use a single blade razor, don't use multiple blades. But however, they found that the best method was to, wet your skin, use a gel to foam shaving cream, and then a multi-bladed razor with moisture bars. Like that was, and shaving with the grain, not against. Other methods that I've seen that are helpful is like shaving with,
Wait, because everyone always says to go against the grain, so it's to go with the grain.
yeah, yeah.
Huh. Okay, that's wild. Yeah.
And then, one device that I use that I found is helpful is Philips, what is it called? One blade, I think. I use it myself because like I was getting severe ingrowns. That's one that I've recommended to patients. Then also some patients like using clippers to trim their facial hair. And that prevents ingrowns because basically, especially if you have a curlier hair texture, you're not just getting ingrowns. This is something that I've often seen in my patients of color. They get a condition called pseudofolliculitis barbae, which literally means like it's like a fake follicular inflammation. It's true inflammation, but it looks like folliculitis because the hair, if cut too short, when it's coming back out of the skin, can grow back in, and then your body treats
Is
it as
that
like
what
a
that
foreign
is?
body. Yeah, yeah. So
I would get
people
like
can get
crazy
that.
abscesses because like that's what happens to me. It's like they always grow back in.
No, and so yeah, we see it in
This
all
is like
kinds
a
of
diagnosis
people.
of me, but yeah, that's wild.
So I mean, other things like, depending on what your deal is, like if you don't want to have facial hair, top way to get rid of that is laser hair reduction. Um, Also, eflornithine cream, which is available by prescription under the trade name Vanica, also helpful.
Oh, cool. Okay. So there's multiple ways to address it, but I think the first thing is like determining, is it an ingrown or is it something else, because that will
Mhm.
change kind of your treatment. Amazing. So I would love to talk a little bit about kind of common questions that you get, if it's different from what we talked about. Are there, things that, top level things that people can learn?
Okay. So, I think when it comes to, transitioning, one of the questions that I actually got from one of my followers, who I guess is a physician, is like, what can you do if a patient is starting on testosterone and you want to prevent acne? Um, and, not like any studies have been done about setting up a regimen, but, one thing that people could think about doing that they're, definitely not going to regret is starting a retinoid right off the bat, because it has other benefits aside from just treating or preventing acne. So, an easy one that I'm always talking about is a Dapoline 0.1% gel, which is available over the counter in the United States. And that's a good habit to get in right off the bat, as well as thinking about your BHAs, which can get into the pore and help with some of that, hyperkeratinized skin there, as well as thinking about something like benzoyl peroxide, which is anti-inflammatory, as well as cutting down on Cutibacterium acnes. That's something that comes up a lot. Another thing that I was asked about
Mm-hmm.
is scar reduction. So after people have undergone, usually it's top surgery. There are two different methods. One method will leave quite a bit of scarring. So, what kinds of things could be done for that? Those include, steroid injections if scars are hypertrophic. They could include resurfacing lasers or even vascular lasers
And what's
sometimes for red
hypertrophic?
scars. Oh, sorry. So scars that are raised. Thank
Ah,
you.
okay, yes. I'm like,
So for scars that are raised, yeah, some methods that we have of scar reduction include steroid injection. So steroids will atrophy the dermis in those areas. So if you're using that in a way that's controlled, you could flatten out scars. Other, resurfacing modalities. Sorry.
and that's like for good. Like it doesn't like, because I guess for me it's like is that like for good? Like it'll basically heal it and it will allow the skin to kind of repair it, or is it something you have to go back in constantly for?
People can have pretty durable results, but there is a chance of scar tissue growing back. But, I would say it's not like you're going to be, after like a first round of treatments, it's not something that you would have to go back for many, many times. But, scar
Right. It's not
erythema,
like a
yeah,
Botox or something like that. Yeah.
yeah. And then as far as like red scars, vascular lasers do work well at decreasing redness. And then another way of kind of remodeling the collagen are these resurfacing lasers. So that basically either are non-ablative, in which they're just like shooting heat into the skin, or ablative, where they're actually like burning the skin to make it heal um, in a more desirable way.
Right. And that's kind of like the concept behind, and correct me if I'm wrong, like when we're talking about like this mini trauma to the skin, you're basically like telling the skin to heal it, but you're doing it in a more controlled way so you can actually control the results.
Exactly, exactly. So
Yeah. It's like
many,
microneedling. It's like, yeah.
yeah. So like many of the resurfacing modalities that we have are fractionated, and the idea behind that is like you're not ablating or either heating the entire area that you're treating. It's just basically columns with
Yeah.
columns of normal skin in between that can fill in those areas faster.
That's so cool. Yeah, because with Fraxel, correct me, but that's like, because I eventually want to get Fraxel just because like a lot of my friends have gotten it and I'm like, hmm. But yeah, that's like when you do like all over, but this would be much more precision based.
Yeah, so like some of the Fraxel lasers are fractionated, hence the name. So they do
Okay.
have that design of, leaving some of the skin totally untouched. And the reason for that is that, we found that when our skin regenerates, the stem cells often come from hair structures. So you leaving some of those hair structures intact, that's where everything
Because if you
kind
just
of
burn it all off,
emerges from.
then.
it's way more difficult to heal from. So yeah, a good example
That
of
why burning
that.
your whole face off is a bad idea? Sorry, I keep getting like people like being like, so I tried this at-home treatment, and I'm like, don't go to a go to a professional, please.
So yeah, I mean, there are cosmetic modalities that do stuff like that. So if you've ever heard of like deep chemical peels or like the Baker Gordon phenol peel, that's not something that many people do anymore just because like we're in a society that like wants no downtime from anything. But I would encourage you to look up old before and afters like from the 80s. And it's like, yeah, people basically burn their entire face off with acid, took 6 months to heal, and then when they were done, looked 10 years younger.
Wait, but then
Mhm.
how long would that last? Like, I hope that would last for like 10 years.
Like a long time. Yeah, that's
Okay,
your skin then.
okay. Well,
So
I'm
it
not
was,
doing that.
yeah, I mean, nobody has time for that anymore. So,
Maybe if I find the images, I'm gonna put them right here. I'm gonna edit them right now so people can see that. But that is wild. So I think what would also be helpful, and maybe this is where we can end, unless if you have like other things to add. I would love to know if you have any like resources or where we can find you. So maybe we can do plugs there, and then if you have any resources.
okay, so where you can find me, I am at DermAngelo on all social media. I am on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. You can even find me on Facebook if anybody's still on Facebook, but I'm there. And also my website, dermangelo.com. As far as resources, what I would say is for people looking to find out more information about transitioning, the best thing that you can do is get plugged in with a primary care provider that is like competent in taking care of our queer community. Like that is, they will be your champion. So, fortunately, if you're somebody who lives in a big city, like I'm in New York, here we have Callum Lord. I just moved from DC where we have the Whitman Walker Center. I understand not everybody lives in an area where they have access to care like that, but having a primary care provider who's going to be your champion and knows who to hook you in with for different kinds of therapies is important. I would say also to people who are thinking about transitioning or thinking about their gender identity, just know that medical transition is not a necessary thing for you to identify the way that you want to identify. And if any of the therapies that we talked about today or that you encounter sound like something that you don't want to do, that is totally fine. That affects nothing. You are the decider in all this, so be empowered in that.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much. And I highly recommend checking out particularly your YouTube channel because you go into such detail. Don't get me wrong, I love TikTok. It's how we met. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to that. But I think that, even just like you're about double cleansing and like you going into the research on that and the available peer-reviewed research was just like one of my favorite videos. So head to the YouTube channels, TikTok, obviously, Instagram, all the things. And thank you so, so much. This was amazing.
Thank you for having me.